Welcome to Week 6 of the South Carolina Football Preview Show. We're here at the Village Idiot Pizza and Pub, our sponsor. We're at the 5 Points location. Village Idiot also has a location on Forest Drive in the Forest Acres area. David, Gamecocks are 3-2 overall, 2-2 in the SEC, coming off of a heart-wrenching loss to Missouri. The Gamecocks forced 10 consecutive punts. This is a team that had forced, I believe, 8 punts in the first 4 games, forced 10 consecutive punts from the Tigers, allowed 69 combined yards on 11 straight Missouri drives. Seems like they put the game away with a spectacular Pharoh Cooper touchdown catch with 7 minutes left. However, Steve Spurrier fails to go for 2 points, immediately realizes his mistake when he looks up and sees the scoreboard says 20-7. At the time, I would think 98% of the people in the world thought it was not going to make a difference. Missouri finally hits a big pass play, scores 2 late touchdowns. The Gamecocks offense goes silent. The result, 21-20 Missouri. South Carolina 2-2 halfway through their conference schedule. We're going to shake things up a little bit on our order of things this week and address, first of all, the sky is falling contingent. The people who, South Carolina has matched their loss total from the last 3 years already. And that has brought out the doom and the gloom in some of our internet chats and some of the, just the folks who come up to us on the street. So, I'm going to let you answer first. At 3-2, is the season a bust 5 games in?
Of course not, Josh. I mean, yeah, the 2 losses in the first 5 games is upsetting, especially for a team that came in with a lot of hype and a lot of, expectation after 3 straight 11-win seasons. But is it over? Of course not, because the SEC East is beating up on itself. South Carolina still has a very good chance to win the SEC East. Yes, there's a very tough game at Auburn coming up, but the rest of the games are all very conducive for the Gamecocks to win. Now, I don't think we can all sit here and say win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. I just think that last week showed us you can't pick what's going to happen with this team. It's just going to be a week-to-week slog. But the season is not over. South Carolina still has a chance to get its feet under it and really make this a special season. And, if they do happen to go, regress to 9 wins, 8 wins, and just go to a bowl, well, remember what it was before Steve Spurrier got here, when there was, 11 bowl appearances in the history of the school, and they'd only won 3 of them. So, going to a bowl game every year is not a bad thing. Not saying that's what South Carolina is going to be relegated to, but there's a lot of games left to play, Josh. And, it's the goals are still there, the goals are still intact, and they can still win this East. What do you think?
I would answer that question with a question. To anybody who is posing that question, my question would be, are you on drugs? Seriously, it's 2-2. Granted, I understand the cause for concern, and I understand when you look ahead, absolutely they are losable games on this schedule. But have you seen the rest of the SEC East play? The Gamecocks are 4 games into their conference schedule. Nobody but Vandy has played more than 2 games. This is a league that, you could be looking at a bunch of 4-4 teams down to the 8th tiebreaker.
Yeah, and losing that tiebreaker to Missouri. Missouri still got to go play at Texas A&M among its other games. All is not lost here.
And Missouri, they didn't look that good, frankly. So, my point is there is plenty of season left to play. If you're starting to talk about the season being a bust, you need to, change your ways. I'm not saying it won't be. I'm not saying that things are going to work out great. But right now, this season is not a bust. Right now, you got to go to Kentucky and win a game. Second question that's popped up: is it time to see Connor Mitch and Perry or whoever is the backup quarterback? David.
Well, look, Josh, I think that we all thought that we might see Connor Mitch or Perry Orth at some point in this season, because they do want to try to get one of those 2 guys in, because, hey, let's be honest, Connor Mitch is a very good candidate for the future of the position, and Perry Orth's a guy who's been around, paid his dues, and Steve Spurrier's always been complimentary of it. Now, they haven't been able to get them in because the games have been dogfights. They've been too close to allow an untested guy, neither one of them's ever thrown a pass in a game, to come in and take over at that point. There hasn't been a comfortable spot where they said, go in and take a series just to get your feet under it.
Right.
Now, I understand the concern, but Dylan Thompson has had a great season. He had good numbers last week. The reason why that a lot of his numbers didn't work, they kept throwing deep pass routes, and it wasn't him who was calling those plays, you see. They should have just kept running the ball, but they didn't. And Dylan Thompson was kind of left in there to take the heat of it, and he got beaten up in more ways than one. For people who are saying that Dylan Thompson is done, that they should just pull the plug on him, How can you think that? I mean, are you really going to go start an untested rookie quarterback on the road in the SEC? Yeah, I know it's Kentucky, but Kentucky's not bad. And, you can't do that. You have to give yourself the best chance to win. This is Dylan Thompson's show and Dylan Thompson's team. And if the point comes up or they're ever in a comfortable lead, maybe they will put Perry Orth or Connor Mitch in. But right now, as I answered on Twitter yesterday, who would be the number 2 guy? Pharoh Cooper. He's got to be. Josh, what do you think?
Well, I think that I agree with you. If this is kind of a different question. I mean, it depends on the question. If you're saying, should Connor Mitch or Perry Orth start over Dylan Thompson, I would put you in the are you on drugs category again. If you're saying, I sure would like to see Connor Mitch or Perry Orth and see what they've got. I think some of this started when Steve Spurrier said if Dylan Thompson throws 5 straight interceptions, he's still going out there to play quarterback. And people started thinking, oh my word, did Connor Mitch's arm fall off? They just want to see what they've got for the future, and I understand that. But again, this is a team that, can't be looking to next year, can't be looking to next week.
You got to win this week.
Got to go win games, and there is no question in the world that Dylan Thompson gives you the best chance to do that, far and away. So this week, the Kentucky Wildcats. Not your dad's or granddad's Kentucky team, Steve Spurrier says. David, what do you think?
Well, I think that's a very good point, Josh. As a final point, if you guys are really stressing out about this backup quarterback 3-2, come on down to Village Idiot, get this lunch special. It'll really take the edge off. I'm telling you.
Or drink.
Yeah, I mean, best pizza in town, And if you want to come in a little bit later at night, I'm sure they'll be able to help you out as well. But Kentucky Wildcats, now, no one's saying that they're going to challenge for the college football playoff right away. Right. But the energy and the passion that Mark Stoops has brought into this job in just his second year is incredible. This team went 0-8 in the league last year, Josh, and you know what? He ended up getting a contract extension anyway. Why? Because he's getting the recruits. He's building the fan base. He's getting more money into the program, and it has really paid off. They got their first SEC win in quite some time last week when they beat Vanderbilt. And while you do have to start bringing up the Kentucky streaks, for instance, they haven't won back-to-back SEC games since 2009. But still, it's a building block, and they're just looking to get better every single week. What Kentucky does well is what you would expect from a guy named Stoops leading the team. They play defense really well. They have 3 defensive ends that can rove in between the linebacker and defensive end spots, and those are Zadarius Smith, Alvin Bud Dupree, and Jason Hatcher. Between those guys, they have 7.5 tackles for loss and 3.5 sacks. Now, when you consider how much of a problem South Carolina had with Missouri's defensive ends last week, this is a significant problem. Now, I will say that Dupree, Hatcher, Smith, those guys are the big typical defensive ends, 6'5", 6'6". They're not the short and quick guys that Missouri had that Corey Robinson and Brandon Shell just could not get a handle on all the time. So you think that might be a little bit of an easier time for Dylan Thompson, but this defense is still not giving up a lot of points. Granted, they haven't played a lot of great offenses. I mean, probably the best offense they played was Florida, and that's a topic for another day. But anyway, they really know how, they believe in themselves. On offense, they do have a very good running back in Braylon Hurd, who's averaged about 75 yards a game, and Patrick Tolles at quarterback. Now, he's no superstar, but he's good enough to get the job done. He's thrown 4 picks to 6 touchdowns, but mostly he's finding his receivers to get open. Kentucky did have some news this week. They had to suspend 4 players for an off-campus pellet gun incident, which one of those was Drew Barker, the former quarterback who was considered South Carolina. Now, Barker and another player were redshirting anyway, and they won't play. But Stanley Williams was going to be on there, and Dorian Baker was also going to play. Those guys were starting wide receivers, and Stanley Williams was the best kickoff man that Kentucky had. He's returned 4 of their 5 kickoffs this year. Both those guys are out of the game. So will that affect them? A little bit, because Patrick Tolles won't have a couple of his targets to throw to, but overall Kentucky still has a lot of weapons that can really hurt South Carolina.
And speaking of weapons, midweek, Steve Spurrier was talking about Pharoh Cooper. Bumps, bruises, pulled muscle.
He took a heck of a shot on that touchdown catch.
Did not practice Monday and was limited Tuesday. They were still waiting to get him back to full speed. The Gamecocks, coming off of their worst offensive performance of the season, cannot afford to be without.
They got to have that guy.
Who has been their best offensive player so far, I think.
Now it's time for our Village Idiot mailbag. We thank you for chiming in on our Facebook and Twitter feeds to ask us some questions this week. First question from Slim Shady. Why don't we see Brendan Nosovich run the Wildcats some, since Pharoh Cooper says that he's not comfortable throwing a lot of passes? Will we see another quarterback for a better run pass threat anytime soon? Well, Slim, Brendan Nosovich is a special teams guy, and I know that they said they would look at him in the Wildcat package. Basically, that was like, listen, we like you as an athlete. We're going to try to work you in, but there's a lot better options out there. Honestly, if they try to put Nosovich in there just to run, the other teams know how badly he throws the ball. Okay, now let's just be honest. He threw one during the spring that came out end over end, and that's why he's not playing quarterback anymore. So they would know that he's in there just to run. They at least want to keep the threat of a passing game intact, which is why Pharoh Cooper, and I think Mike Davis ran one play of it against Missouri.
Right.
They want to have that ready to go. So I know that everybody kind of wants to see a shakeup after a bad offensive game, but in terms of the Wildcat, it's going to be Pharoh Cooper, and that's pretty much it. And with Pharoh, if they ever have to lean on him to throw more than, say, 3-4 times a game, well, it's probably going to get real uncomfortable. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Josh, next question.
Rocky has less of a question than a gripe, but it's an understandable gripe. Our offensive line should be blowing defenses out, but it just isn't happening. Our running game is very poor. I don't know if the running game is very poor, but the running game has not been what a lot of people thought it was going to be.
I think it'd be a lot better if it was committed to more.
People thought that this was going to be a Mike Davis-centered team. The run blocking has been inconsistent. Mike Davis has been inconsistent. Brandon Wilds has been inconsistent. The whole thing's just been inconsistent. The pass blocking has at times been really, really rough. Ooh. So, Rocky, I understand your frustration. I think that there was potential is a word that college football coaches hate. This offensive line has the potential to be one of the best in the SEC. It has not been a major weapon for this team yet, though, and that's been a problem. There's no question.
Our next question comes from Quinshad. And have we found a receiver other than Pharoh Cooper that can play 4 quarters? I understand your frustration, Quinshad, because it's obviously been Pharoh Cooper, going out there and taking all the tough plays. And I think that they do have other guys like that. They do have Nick Jones.
Yeah,
he's a guy that's going to be going over the middle, sacrificing himself. He will do whatever it takes. And while he had 5 catches last week, Dylan Thompson misfired on a lot of passes to Jones also as well. Now, you do have Jones, you do have Cooper. I think that Shaq Rowland has that potential, but what we saw happen last week was the same thing that happened early in the season. He would get bumped off the line, bumped 5 or 7 yards downfield, throw up his hands and ask for interference and quit on the route. Cannot do that. You've got to keep finishing the route. Try to get that flag, if nothing else, because they're going to be throwing some pass interference flags this year. And you just can't give up on the route like Shaq Rowland has been prone to do. That guy's got all the talent in the world, but he's just got to get out of his own way so they can get him downfield. The downfield threat was basically eliminated last week except for Pharoh Cooper. So Cooper and Jones are those 2 guys that are going to do anything that they can, and until they start getting some answers from the other guys, it's probably going to remain those 2. And now it's time for our final segment of the week, our guest picker. We've got Mark Causey from the Village Idiot in here this week. Mark, good to see you again, man. How you been?
Doing all right.
So, rough week last week for the Gamecocks.
Oh, yeah.
They lost one that they shouldn't have. They got beat by a team that they're better than, but it's a whole new week. We mentioned Kentucky. We mentioned South Carolina. Honestly, don't have a definite reason why South Carolina is going to win this game, except that, it's Kentucky and they usually go up there and play lousy, but they usually win. I think that they're going to get the offense on track because they won't be facing a defense as specific as Mizzou's with those small and quick ends. Yeah. And I think South Carolina is going to pull this one out 31-28. Mark, what do you think?
I think it's a bounce back week for the boys. I'm going 27-21, Carolina.
27-21. You think that offense is going to get up there, and really that defense is going to hold them to 21 points?
Yeah, I think they're ready. It's time.
Josh, what you think? We've got a couple of close games already, but both for South Carolina.
Well, I'm not sure we have in this week given the Gamecock defense enough credit for what was a resurgent performance. It didn't work out on those last 2 drives. And Matty Malk was not a great quarterback, but the defense, the coverage from the get-go, the coverage was much better. So I think the defense has taken a step. I think that's what gets South Carolina through, because the offense I'm a little concerned about going up against 2 more guys who can really rush the passer, with concerns about Pharoh Cooper being 100%. With some confidence concerns offensively. I think this could be a real struggle, but I think South Carolina playing better on defense has really turned the corner there. The line on this, the betting public has lost a lot of faith in the Gamecocks. They opened as 10-point favorites. It was down to 4 at one point this week. But I think South Carolina starts to win back a little bit of that love and gets maybe a 20-10 win against the Kentucky Wildcats. If they don't, we're really going to be answering skies falling as the season of bust questions next week. But we all seem to think that they do.
Winning ugly, still winning.
Yep.
Come join us 5:30-ish on Saturdays before a 7:30 kickoff. We'll give you all the last-minute updates and check back with GoGamecocks.com the rest of the week.